It's that switching off the autopilot of I'm just going to promote my product to try and sell it, and to instead think about your target buyer, your target sort of customer persona, and help them. Think of the problems they're facing in their day-to-day role, and then create content to help them from the knowledge and experience you have of working in that industry and talking to other decision makers. So it could be, I'm trying to sell to finance directors. So today I'm going to post, if I were a finance director, here are the 5 trends I would be looking at in 2024 to maximize my results. Pump, 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 pump. It's always thinking about your target customer. What do they need? What are they going to want to consume? What gives them the most value? That, all that giving you give then warms that opportunity for starting a conversation and building a relationship.
Welcome to today's episode of Soundcheck. I'm very, very excited to be joined by Daniel Disney, who's not only an investor in Trumpet, but also the founder of a company that I followed, I think, my entire sales career, the Daily Sales. And you do a whole bunch more. I'd love to hear more on your journey, Daniel.
Thank you for having me, Rory. Obviously, a massive fan of what you're doing with Trumpet, hence why I was so keen to support you with it. And so it's so nice to hear that you followed the Daily Sales for such a long time. It seems crazy to me thinking about how long I've been sharing content on that page and platform. And I mean, it's been certainly a crazy journey. But yeah, the Daily Sales started off as just a page to share content for salespeople, and it grew so fast that it's become its own sort of media business, and then has sort of supported me becoming a LinkedIn and social selling trainer and speaker and an author. So I wear many hats, but my passion is sales, and where I help people the most is sort of leveraging social selling, which is such a big opportunity for salespeople at the moment.
Exactly, and that's what we're going to dive into today. You even got the T-shirt. It's almost like you kind of knew the topic of the episode. But I guess like keen to hear, because you were doing social selling before social selling was cool, or because right now it's like the hot topic. How did you think about it back then, and investing in your own personal brand? Like what made you like see this trend, or kind of predict this trend?
It was kind of a right place, right time, where it must have been maybe coming up to about 10, 11 years ago that I started using LinkedIn. So again, LinkedIn was a lot smaller back then. No one really knew what it was, or how to use it. And being someone who's not very social media, in any way prior to using LinkedIn, all I saw was sort of a digital networking space where my customers were there, some of my colleagues were there, and it was a sort of professional platform. And that appealed to me as someone who was, a high performing salesperson. And so I started using it, and it was, again, just starting to see those opportunities, like starting to send messages to prospects and then booking meetings and building relationships and rapport, and being able to start to grow a small audience, and all these sort of things, like little light bulbs of, wow, look at all these different things as a salesperson you can do on this platform. And then it's obviously grown and grown and grown since then. But it's funny you mentioned social selling before social selling was cool. For the first probably 5 years that I was using it, it was so against the grain. And even sharing content to the sort of sales industry, I was battered from traditional salespeople, and I mean, from all angles. And it was such a challenge trying to show people what social selling was. And it's quite funny, but very nice to see it come the other side of that, become embraced. But even though it's now accepted, I would say the vast majority of companies that I speak to on a regular basis are not even scratching the surface. They might be 10-20% actually using social selling's capabilities. So yes, it's great, it's accepted, but we've still got so much more to do before it becomes as common practice as email and cold calling.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point you make there, and actually how you approached it in the early days. It wasn't seen as I think a lot of reps see leveraging socials as a way to get the deal done. Whereas you were mentioning about building networks and like learning on content and learning from other thought leaders. Do you think it's that mindset that's needed for people to embrace it properly and not see it as just another channel, another way of outreach, another way to get in front of a buyer?
Yeah, I guess the problem that you're kind of highlighting is that there obviously are a lot of reps that work in sales that kind of go into this autopilot mode of, right, I just need to pitch. I'm going to spam out a load of emails. I'm going to script read a ton of cold calls. And then if I'm using LinkedIn, I'm going to reshare the company blog and send a bunch of spammy messages. And, that doesn't work, never has worked, and never will work. But the salespeople that kind of understand sales as being sort of relationship based and human to human, that's where you start to find those opportunities in LinkedIn. And it absolutely is a mindset shift of not going onto this platform to try and sell something, but to help people, to network, to have conversations. It's literally just like a digital networking event. So, you don't go into a networking event and pitch every single person you speak to. You talk, you ask questions, you get to know them. And, sometimes there's opportunities immediately. Sometimes there's opportunities after several weeks and months of going to that networking event. The only difference is we're doing it online now. You can network with people all over the world. It, has more opportunities, but the principles are the same. And for a lot of salespeople, sometimes because they're carrying so much pressure on their shoulders and they perhaps haven't had the right training, coaching, or support, they just go into this, which is, why we've had that big issue with Google and Yahoo with the spammy emails now getting weighed in heavily. Completely understandable. Very well, I say it's a good thing. It's sad that literally that has to force the sales industry to stop spamming and start focusing a bit more on quality. But I think that really does reflect where a vast majority of salespeople sort of operate. And the reality is it doesn't work very well, and it is time for sales reps to level up. And whether it's email, phone, social, digital rooms, you have to be, especially as we're competing against AI and all these other advancements, salespeople need to raise that bar.
Definitely, we're seeing that at the moment. And you've trained and consulted some of the biggest companies in the world. You've got the biggest sales teams and the best sales teams in the world. And how do you communicate the piece around getting started? So I remember, I've worked at companies before, and I never knew what to share. As you mentioned, I share a case study or a blog or a recent report. I just repost it and expect people to engage with it, and no one did because they saw I was a salesperson. Then since starting Trumpet, we really focused on value-add messaging, sharing like best practice, and slightly unique because Trumpet, we sell to salespeople. That's our audience. They're highly engaged on that network. But how do you communicate starting with LinkedIn and getting started with LinkedIn if you maybe sell to other industries, maybe people that aren't as present on LinkedIn?
It's an interesting one. And actually, that content piece has become a much bigger part of my training and consulting and the work I do, because it's where sales teams, reps probably need the bigger part of support. Content and messaging is definitely where they need a lot more support. And yeah, you're right, there are some more active industries like sales, marketing, recruitment, etc., but then you've got some less active ones. And but you've kind of highlighted what the key is, and it's the value you give. And again, it's that switching off the autopilot of, I'm just going to promote my product to try and sell it, and to instead think about your target buyer, your target sort of customer persona, and help them. Think of the problems they're facing in their day-to-day role, and then create content to help them from the knowledge and experience you have of working in that industry and talking to other decision makers. So it could be, I'm trying to sell to finance directors. So today I'm going to post, if I were a finance director, here are the 5 trends I would be looking at in 2024 to maximize my results. Bum, 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 bum. It's always thinking about your target customer. What do they need? What are they going to want to consume? What gives them the most value? That, all that giving you give then warms that opportunity for starting a conversation and building a relationship.
Definitely. And I think there's a stat thrown around a lot these days by Gartner around buyers doing, I think, 70% of their research before speaking to salespeople. And that's from all formats of content. I think uh, the number of touch points, as in formats of content that a buyer will digest, has increased by like 5 or 6x in the last 10 years because of socials. There's more channels that they can find information, review sites, and so forth. So yeah, curious to hear how you think buyers are thinking about engaging with content on socials.
Was an interesting one because Buyers are consuming content as part of their research process, as part of them finding who they want to buy from. But they're not just consuming content of the product, they're consuming content from people. And that personal brand piece is probably one of the biggest anchors that a salesperson can leverage, because everyone has competitors. It's probably more competitive for most salespeople than it's ever been before. And so using something like a personal brand to stand out can be an absolute game changer. And I give you an example. I reached out to a CEO of a huge sort of global company. I have no history with them, never worked with them, no relationship whatsoever. I sent a connection request. And before I could even send a prospecting message, the CEO messaged me and said, Daniel, your reputation precedes you. Looking forward to getting to know you. Now, as a salesperson going into essentially a cold opportunity, that couldn't be a better opener to that conversation. And we who we know in sales, it would take you a long time to get to that sort of place of rapport and trust and all those things. So to be there before you've even spoken to them, that through your content that you share, the personal brand that you build, when you add that to all of the value content that's going to aid with their research, you then get this amazing mixture that your prospects and customers are going to be consuming that leans them heavily towards you. And to your question before, which is getting started, all of this, which sounds quite complicated, is actually really simple. Sharing content like this on a regular, consistent basis doesn't take a lot of time. Once you know how to do it and all the different ways of formatting it, it's actually very simple. And it could be 15, 30 minutes a day, just doing a few consistent activities. But when you're doing that alongside your usual day to day routine, it feeds into everything. That content and personal brand is going to help when people are answering your cold calls. And then suddenly they recognize you. Oh, Rory, yeah, I just saw your post yesterday, really enjoyed it. Or when they get your emails. And again, they've seen your activeness on LinkedIn. When you're building that relationship and you're engaging in their content, they're seeing your continued value that you deliver. It just impacts every single point. And okay, getting started is a slight challenge, but once you know what you're doing, I mean, making your first cold call was a challenge. Making your first cold call was horrible and scary. And it's the same with sharing your first post and, learning this as a new skill. But to your point, prospects and decision makers in all industries are using LinkedIn. LinkedIn's growing massively fast. They crossed 1 billion members. Decision makers are spending a lot of time on it. It is impacting and influencing them. So it's less of a choice. It's just more of a now's the time to get started, essentially before your competitors do.
People buy from people, right? I think that's the key way to think about it. And actually, that really resonated with me. If I put myself in that scenario, built a fair following on LinkedIn. If I was to cold call someone, maybe we're already connected with something. There is that familiarity, and I think that's maybe what you're saying. It comes down to is building that presence, that awareness, having some level of reach, but also trust. Where if you're just promoting what your company does, people will ignore you and you won't build a following. But if you're a domain expert, you've got industry expertise, and you're sharing value add content, people will naturally start to congregate and share and engage with your content. And with that approach, then there's always going back to the getting started. A lot of salespeople out there will be listening and thinking, but my friends are going to laugh at me, or there's going to be crickets and no one's going to engage with it. And I experienced that. But what would be your advice to them in those early days of starting to build that brand, that social presence?
I experienced it too, Rory. I mean, crickets. Again, this was before LinkedIn was cool. So when I started using it, I was the only one in the office using it, and everyone would make fun of me. And oh, look, Dan's posted something again. And so I've been there and I've taken that sort of stick. But I'm fortunate that I'm very focused on what I do, and none of that really bothers me. But I do get it. Posting your first post. I mean, I think I looked back to the first article I ever shared, and I think it had a grand total of 3 likes and probably 20 impressions. But the first cold call I made was terrible. The second one was terrible. The third was terrible. But I got better and better and better. And it's the same with content. It's the same with learning anything new. The problem is there's so many deep resistances to learning new things and making changes to life, to work. and you have to fight through it, thinking of that bigger picture, thinking of the bigger opportunity. And the best thing you can do is look for a support network around you. Look for people within your business that might be able to support you and train you. Go and speak to marketing and see if they can give you some guidance on using LinkedIn. Go and speak to people within your department or other departments that might be using social more actively. Again, connect and follow people in the wider LinkedIn world. And there's so many resources, from podcasts like this to books to YouTube videos. Learn, create that support network, and just get started. Try not to overthink it. Don't worry about the likes. They don't mean a lot at the start. You might get 3 likes and 20 impressions, but one of those likes might be from a decision maker that you've been trying to reach for so long. And that one little like or that one little impression finally gets them to respond to your message or reply to your email. So too much focus, and a lot of people push out all these followers and likes and engagement, and it is a nice thing to build up towards, but at the start, don't overthink it. All I would say is go there with one goal, and that is to help your customers. That's your only goal. Share content because you want to help. Don't worry about anything else. Just keep showing up, be there consistently, and go out there to help, because if you do that, it will build.
I love that. And I can also vouch for what you're saying. I don't think anyone can work out the LinkedIn algorithm. I think when I put in extra effort into a post, I get less engagement. And sometimes where I put in less effort, it does really well. And I just can't work out how it all works. But yeah, a little bit beyond me. And with that, then, you've been in the social selling space for a while, and you are the king of it. I think that's there's no denying it. How have you seen the actual format and style of content being shared change? Has there been a drastic change, or are you thinking? Do you think? Sorry, it's actually just more of the same. Yeah, keen to hear.
Yeah, so in terms of changes, the general concept of it hasn't changed. So what has worked in the past, present, and what will work in the future will always be giving value to your target customers. But what has changed is the different forms of content. So when I started, it was literally written text posts and articles and eventually photos. Those were the only 3 things. And now we've got videos, we've got polls, we've got newsletters. It's evolved into multiple forms, and no doubt that will continue to grow and evolve as well. So we have different forms of content, but it's still all about the value you give. I guess the only thing, and again, this isn't a change, this has been the same, past, present, and future. It's all about the creativity. And when you have a platform like LinkedIn that's getting noisier and noisier, more people are starting to become active, more salespeople are starting to become active, then that sort of requirement of evolution of a higher standard of content comes into play, where you need to look for your own niche, your own tone, your own creativity. Everyone's sharing the same messages. Every salesperson, marketer, we're all sharing the same stuff. It's all the same content going out. It's just we each find different ways to present that message. And as a salesperson trying to connect with your customers, you want to find different ways. So as an example, one of my interests personally is films. I love going to the cinema. I love watching films. So I will try and bring that into my content, whether it's through the memes, whether it's through articles, or it could be 5 reasons salespeople should watch the Rocky films, and I'll pull in some lessons from the films, and it allows me to create a niche. We have sales rappers, sales musicians. I mean, there are people coming in, performers, theater, actors, all coming in with different things that they can bring to their content. So, everyone, we're all individual. We're all unique. We all have different backgrounds, experiences, interests. And as we build our personal brands, it's going to be more effective to try and tap into those things and look for different ways you can share that value to stand out from the crowd. Just like applying for a job, if you just send in a white paper CV with the same format as everyone else, it's going to go in that pile and it's not going to stand out. But if you print it on yellow paper, if you add some different fonts, then it stands out. And that's kind of the key to content that, again, hasn't changed, but most people kind of don't think of that. They're just focused on the content itself.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think the way I'm hearing that as well is it's almost like the human side of selling is still it exists in socials, and that's actually how you build your brand. Brand is the way you communicate your messaging, your tone of voice that you mentioned earlier. And we've definitely started to see that. There's some incredible influencers and up and coming ones like young AEs who are killing it. And you can read their post without seeing who it is and know it's them. And I
Mhm.
think that's quite difficult. And maybe some people don't know what their voice is or their style of messaging. And how would you encourage people to discover that?
So it comes with time. That's the one thing I'll say, that I wish there was a easy formula to just identifying it straight away. The activities I do with companies and teams is to get them to start mind mapping what they think their personal brand might be. So that we have a sort of set of questions and they can start to answer about themselves, their interests, their experiences, etc. And we start to mind map some of the key things that will be the foundations of their brand. But a personal brand is built through a staged process of posting, engaging, consuming, and it evolves through time. I didn't wake up 10 years ago, put on a red social selling t-shirt and start sharing the content I shared. This was an evolution, even down to the t-shirt. When I first started, I had 4 different colors, and so it was a constant evolution. The red stuck, it allowed me to expand, and so your personal brand will evolve in time, and it's good to start thinking about it at the start. But the best ways you will grow yours is to share consistently, to engage, so comment on different posts, and again build your confidence as an individual voice, and then consume more content, follow key industry influencers, follow people that you enjoy their content, and consume more of it, because that's where you will find inspiration. And you might read a post or watch a video and something will spark in your head and you'll think, oh, actually, here's a story I have for that. I used to drive to the office when I was in the early days of LinkedIn. I'd be driving to the office, listening to sales podcasts, and I'd probably come up with 2, 3 ideas on the way to work of posts just from something, an individual thing someone said in a podcast episode would make me think that's a good post idea. And that would be the inspiration I needed. So surrounding yourself with that type of content in all different forms, and again, slowly building your voice, will help you evolve and grow a personal brand.
I guess no one's an overnight thought leader, and you can't know it all, and then that's it. And you just keep sharing that stuff. You'll quite quickly become stale, I guess, and not so relevant. Um, and here's a hot topic for you, or big debate: leaders that want their team to start posting. Should they be posting themselves, lead by example? And that's one side of it. And then how do they get their team to start posting?
So I love that question, Rory, so much, but I hate the fact that we even have to ask that question because it's such a no brainer. Leading by example should always be a part of a leadership strategy. So if you're a sales leader, you don't have to do it every single day, but every so often picking up the phone and making cold calls will do more for you than any cold calling training guru that you might bring in. But when it comes to LinkedIn, not only does lead by example equally apply for, if they see you doing it, they're going to be more inspired to do it. But there are so many benefits for sales leaders by being active, for recruiting and attracting better talent to future sales jobs or existing sales jobs, to praising and motivating your team by sharing posts, acknowledging their successes, making them feel good, to connecting with other leaders and even key decision makers. If you're a sales manager or a VP of sales, you're going to be connecting with other people at that level, including at some of your sales team's target accounts. So you might have an in that you can then trickle down to them. So there are so many individual opportunities for leaders who are active beyond just leading by example, that again, it's a no-brainer. And I mean, we get the same challenge. They're busy, they don't have time. Well, everyone is busy, trust me, no one has time. But these things don't actually take a lot of time. Again, 15 to 30 minutes to post a bit of content, add a few connections, write a few comments. Just doing those sort of things on a regular basis can have a huge impact. So yeah, I'm massively for leaders being active, and I don't think there's any justified reason why they shouldn't be.
I have to agree. We're very fortunate. Our team have decided themselves to engage with social selling, and they've already started to see the benefits. A couple of months in, and inbounds and partnerships and great learning opportunities as well. Um, so let's say you've got the team engaging with socials, and it's working. What do you think is the future of social selling that those people need to be prepared for?
Mhm. I think there's a couple of things. Number one is that evolution of brand and the importance of creativity. So LinkedIn will only continue to become a noisier and noisier place, and more people will be more active with sharing content. So again, the standard of content that is required will start to level up, and people will look for better quality posts, better written, more value, better quality. So becoming a more competent, confident creator, and as a leader or as a company, providing your team with the tools and resources to be the best creator. So if you're in an office, create studio space that the team can use to record videos, to post photos, to record podcasts, etc. Make sure they've got decent cameras, the right training, the right resources. I think that's going to be a big part. I think we're seeing a lot more software and tools and platforms being built for social selling. So that's going to be a real evolution probably over the next 5 to 10 years of social selling engagement platforms and all these different tools designed to connect with LinkedIn and other networks to help salespeople use them effectively. And I think the final component, which again, it eats me that it even has to be a thing, but it's messaging. It's raising the bar of messaging. And again, I am waiting. We're at the cusp of probably going to be the worst year of messages going out. If email's now out the window, salespeople are going to be swarming to LinkedIn, filling the LinkedIn inbox with spammy messages. And I mean, I'm not looking forward to that. But the flip side of it will be the best companies out there will identify the opportunity and again look to train their reps on sending better messages, proper conversation starting, personalized messages, and utilizing things like audio and video messages where the opportunity really exists. So yeah, going into the future, better messages, being more creative, and then using the tools that can help you be efficient. That's the future social seller right there.
Love it. And if they're aware of that, who should they be looking at right now? Companies or people for inspiration, or like companies that you've seen that you think do a really good job of social selling across the board?
I mean, Trumpet do a fantastic job, and you know, I'm slightly biased, but genuinely, you guys as a team, and as individuals, and as a company, are just sharing amazing content. So, highly recommend that. But I think the one long-standing sort of leader of social selling from a company perspective, in my experience, is Gong. They have been doing this for a long time, and I actually trained them right at the very start all those years ago, and they've just embraced it massively and pushed it heavily. And as a company, Page, phenomenal. As individuals, they've built some of the biggest personal brands in the sales space and continue to do so, even when after years they eventually, you know, spread their wings and go away. They then focus and build new ones. So for me as a company and with individuals, they are hands down the best. But there are lots of companies now, Sales Loft, Outreach, you know, lots of companies that are focusing on LinkedIn, building brands, and it's amazing to watch. So I would definitely recommend go out there and look at your sales influencer lists. There are plenty of them out there, and you know they're all a bit random and certainly not don't you know they're not gospel or always accurate, but they will show you some of the top creators, and there will be a fair percentage that are definitely worth following. But Gong would always be top of my list, I think.
Definitely, and I can confirm that that was not planned for Daniel to say that. But yeah, and I think that the key thing with Gong maybe is the how it's been a continuous part of their strategy. It wasn't a one-off activity. Okay, we've done it. Let's move on. It's yeah. I think they've seen that the kind of new era of reps they're always bringing in. A lot of them are proactively doing that, so it's definitely something they're doing right internally. Daniel, it's been a pleasure to have you on. We've got to wrap up now, so three quick fire questions. The first is, who else should we get on the sound check? The second is another podcast that you would recommend. And then the third is a hot tool that you've seen and like in the space that's not Trumpet.
Oh, good questions. Okay, podcast guest. I would highly recommend my all-time, hands down, favorite sales author. He's a gentleman named Chris Murray. He wrote my favorite sales book, which is The Extremely Successful Salesman's Club. Again, I at home have a bookshelf library of sales books, and I've read old, past, present, new. His has been and continues to be my personal favorite. It's a phenomenal book. It's the only sales book that's told in a story. So you get all those amazing lessons, but wrapped in a story that's engaging to read. And it just, for me, ticks all the boxes. So, incredible author, but he's a great guest. So I will highly recommend him.
Thank
The I've already forgotten the second question. I got so excited about the first one.
Podcast.
Podcast, other podcast. Oof. Do you know what? The Salesman podcast was the one with Will Barron that I listened to over the years and always remains consistent. But I would be wrong not to plug my own podcast, the Social Selling Podcast. We've had some amazing guests, and again, we had Sarah Brazier from Gong. Just amazing insights from people out there on the front line using it.
Awesome.
And then the
Daniel.
last one was the tool recommendation. The,
Yes.
the tool recommendation I'll give is slightly different to. I mean, I'll give two. Canva is the content creators tool for a salesperson who isn't a marketer like myself, who doesn't know how to create content, who couldn't use Photoshop or anything like that. Canva is the most easiest thing to use to do your LinkedIn banner, to do LinkedIn content pieces, quotes, images, and it's free to use. So for me, Canva is phenomenal. The other one I'll mention is a platform called Partner Stack. And in this sort of growing age of influencer marketing, and for a lot of salespeople building their brands and audiences and starting to be able to use their audience to sell, platforms like PartnerStack create a really easy process of links and trackings and conversions and just make it visible, because influencer marketing can be a very gray area and quite a risky place. So it kind of removes that. So those are sort of two tools that, I mean, Canva I've used forever. It's amazing. And PartnerStack's one of the newer ones.
Brilliant. Two very topical recommendations there. Thank you, Daniel. Pleasure to have you on, and look forward to getting you back on the show in future.
Thank you for having me.